Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the data collection webinar series organized by the Data and Analytics section here at UNICEF headquarters. My name is Archana, and along with my colleague Turgai Unalan, we will be hosting the webinar for today. Today's webinar is entitled Administrative Data for Official Statistics. We are very pleased to have Afsaneh Yazdani here with us today. She is a statistician of UNSCAP Statistics Division. She is currently leading a regional initiative on data integration. Prior to joining SCAP in 2018, Afsaneh worked at the Statistical Center of Iran for over 2 decades in various capacities. Afsaneh has extensive experience in official statistics, focusing on survey methodology, censuses, and registered-based statistics. So for today's webinar, administrative data has been an essential source for producing official statistics for a long time. However, the urgent and evolving statistical demands stemming from the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and recently the restrictions imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic to traditional data collection methods underscore their importance. Countries use administrative data for statistical purposes to varying degrees, depending on the level of development of their statistical systems and the quality of their administrative data. However, the fact that administrative data was not initially produced for statistical purposes complicates their use. This webinar will touch upon the nature of administrative data, the requirements and challenges related to their use, and potential solutions. Before we begin, some housekeeping rules. We have scheduled about an hour for today, starting with the presentation followed by a Q&A. Turgai will be chairing the Q&A for today. As always throughout the webinar, kindly keep your mics muted and write your questions in the chat box. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on our SharePoint site for internal colleagues, and we will also upload it onto our Mix YouTube channel for external colleagues. Afsaneh, the floor is all yours. Over to you.
It's a pleasure to be here with you to discuss the use of administrative data for official statistics. This is a wide topic, but I will try to touch on some of its aspects. Let me share my slides. Okay. Before diving into the administrative data, let us take a quick look at the fundamental principles of official statistics. Official statisticians seek facts about the population of interest, and they strive to enhance quality within constraints such as cost and response burden. In their effort, they should adhere to 10 fundamental principles of official statistics. Among them, Principle 5 is particularly relevant to our topic. It states that data for statistical purposes may be drawn from all types of sources, such as statistical surveys or administrative records. Statistical agencies are to choose the source with regard to quality, timeliness, costs, and the burden on respondents. Here you can see some different types of data sources that can be used for producing official statistics. The censuses, surveys, administrative data, and new sources such as big data. Each of these sources have their cons and pros. In this presentation, we will focus on administrative data. These days, data integration, which is combining data from different sources, is becoming more and more common. And now, what do we mean by administrative data? Actually, Actually, there is no standard definition available. However, they are defined as data originally collected for non-statistical purposes. They are collected on a continuous basis as part of an administrative function. The administrative authority decides about the data collection and processing methods. In most cases, the administrative authority is a government unit. Here you can see some of examples of administrative data sources, including the civil registration and vital statistics systems, taxation data, unemployment, health, or education registrations. The use of administrative data in censuses is becoming more popular these days. In general, administrative data can be used directly or indirectly in the production of statistics. Direct usage refers to situations in which there is a direct link between administrative data and a statistical output. The administrative data may be transformed in many ways, such as converting administrative units to statistical units or deriving statistical variables from the unit's attributes. But the output is generally drawn from the administrative data itself. Examples are direct tabulation of admin data or using the data to substitute or supplement a survey where admin data can offer data on a subset of population or some of the variables of interest. Indirect usage of administrative data refers to situations in which admin data plays a supporting role in a statistical output that is primarily sourced from either a survey or another administrative source. Examples include the use of admin data in creation and maintenance of survey frames, such as development of a statistical population register or statistical business register. The other application is in developing sampling designs, such as by providing size measures, or using in editing and imputation, by assisting in the construction of edit rules and imputation models. They can also be used for weighting and estimation by enabling the creation of population benchmarks, the application of model-based frameworks such as smaller estimation, and addressing quality issues such as non-response or exploring potential non-response bias. The other indirect usage is for validation of data at micro and macro level. There are advantages to the use of administrative data for producing official statistics, such as reducing costs and response burden, increasing frequency and timeliness, improving the coverage, and enhancing public image of the statistical agency. The use of admin data will be less expensive than surveys and censuses, although setup costs may be high. Access to admin data sources is frequently free, and data processing requires fewer people. Using administrative data imposes no additional response burden. In many cases, it allows statistics to be produced more frequently with no additional response burden and minimal additional cost. Administrative sources often give complete or almost complete coverage of a target population. This will allow providing more accurate and detailed estimates for various subpopulations, which will improve the availability of disaggregated statistics. The use of administrative sources may increase the timeliness of statistical outputs by allowing access to more up-to-date information concerning certain variables, although this is not always the case. We will see it later. In the cases that public opinion favors data sharing, the increased use of existing data sources can help enhance the prestige of the NSO. However, often public feel uneasy about data sharing. So this can be seen as an advantage depending on how that use is presented to and accepted by the public. Though there are many strong reasons to use administrative sources, there are also a number of challenges and issues that come with them. There should be requirements in place. Here we have classified them under 3 categories: legal and institutional, managerial, and methodological. Under the legal and institutional, the first column that you can see on the left, we have first and foremost requirement, which is availability of administrative data sources that are actively used by administrative procedures, ensuring that the quality of data is sufficient. Then is the legal basis for the use of and access to administrative data for statistical purposes. In most cases, the Statistical Act includes a specific provision for the access to data by National Statistical Office. In other cases, the law may need to be revised. Access to and use of microdata is sometimes restricted by legislation that protects confidentiality and privacy. So, the collaboration between administrative authorities and NSOs should be open and transparent. Measures to protect privacy and confidentiality should be in place, and the benefits and the efforts to protect individual data should be explained to the public. Mechanisms for collaboration with data providers can be built to facilitate data flow. These may be in the form of written agreements that specify the term of sharing of administrative data, types of data and metadata required, frequency of data supply, quality standards, technological standards such as security measures, and the mode of transmission to be used. This can assure a smooth flow of data while minimizing any issues or misunderstandings between the data owner and the statistical organization. Another aspect to consider is building effective partnerships with data producers, data users, and providers of ICT infrastructure. Establishing close connection across organizations, providing feedback on data, identifying shared benefits and possibilities, educating data users, and defining governance in joint projects all have been proven to be effective. Under the managerial category, we mainly have resources. Budget restrictions may prevent obtaining the resources required. Human resources required is broad and includes subject matter statisticians, methodologists, and IT experts holding a combination of different skills such as leadership, negotiation, relation building, legal, data protection, and communication skills. They should be knowledgeable of the numerous laws and rules that govern data access and use. The availability of IT hardware and software tools helps the flow and utilization of administrative data. The use of administrative data may have high setup costs. In some cases, resources are required for maintenance and access to certain data sources. However, it pays off in terms of long-term data utilization. Use of administrative data will also bring along some risks that should be managed. One example is interrupted data sources. So contingency plans should be in place in cases that the data source becomes unavailable. Another challenge is the restriction to changing an ongoing production process by replacing it with an external data source when current procedures are generally accepted and expertise and experience have been acquired. The following category includes methodological challenges and requirements. There exists a wealth of literature and experience on common solutions for shared problems. However, the methodology for use of admin data largely depends on the data source. One requirement is to identify available data sources that can best serve for producing the statistics of interest. For this, we need metadata, which is not always available. Administrative data are not initially produced for statistical purposes, and national statistical offices have little control over data collection and processing. So, one major issue is lack of interoperability in terms of lack of a unique identifier, consistency in the concept, classification, coverage, data format, reference period, and so on. Later, we will see how to deal with these issues. We should also identify potential sources of bias to avoid and decide how to address missing data, errors, and inconsistencies. Another issue is measuring, managing, and publishing the quality of both data sources and the statistics produced. Availability of metadata can be very helpful. Another consideration is how to communicate the produced statistics with users. Now let us go over the methodological requirements and issues in further detail. Administrative data are not produced for statistical purposes, and the NSO has very little control over data collection and processing. So, differences in concepts, definitions, populations, units, classifications, and reference periods are expected. Before using any data source for producing official statistics, we should examine the data source and see how much the administrative data source covers our population of interest and how much is the content in line with the statistical purposes. The administrative source does not necessarily cover the statistical target population. There could be units of target population that are not included in the administrative data source. Also, it may contain some ineligible units. Before using the source, we need to understand the difference and consider how to address the issues. Sometimes, combining different data sources can help in reducing the undercoverage by one data source. We should also find ways to identify the ineligible units so that we can remove them. One key issue when using admin sources is that the units used in those sources do not correspond to the definition of the required statistical unit. For example, the statistical unit of interest could be an establishment, while we have a taxing unit from the administrative source. Or the statistical unit of interest may be household, whereas administrative sources have a list of persons. Converting from administrative unit to statistical unit can be a complicated process that frequently involves some sort of modeling. For example, we can consider all persons living in a single address as a household. This modeling process is known as profiling in business registers. Profiling is an expensive and time-consuming process that should be done by experienced personnel. It is critical to have a full understanding of the impact of differences and selected modeling method. It is sometimes possible to influence the administrative definition. There are also likely to be differences in the definitions of variables between administrative and statistical systems. The data in admin sources have generally been collected for a specific administrative purpose. In most cases, the needs and priorities relating to that purpose are different from those of a statistical system. As an example, the statistical definition for the unemployed person includes all persons over a specified age who were without work, currently available for work, and seeking work in a specified recent period during the reference period. Whereas administrative sources count people claiming unemployment benefits or the people who have registered as looking for work. The first step in resolving such situations is to comprehend the differences and measure their impact. Some differences may have no meaningful effect in practice and can be safely ignored. Others may be systematic and handled through some data adjustments. Combining variables from diverse sources can sometimes be used to determine or estimate the impact of a difference. Again, in some cases, we can possibly influence the administrative definition. The classification systems used in administrative sources may differ from those used in statistics. Even if they are the same, they may be applied differently, depending on the administrative source's primary purpose. Classification in administrative sources are sometimes not applied at the degree of detail required for statistical purposes, or the classification is not a priority variable for the administrative source, which will result in some quality issues. Where classification systems or versions are different, one solution is to create conversion matrices that transfer administrative classification code to a statistical classification code. These mappings can be one-to-one, many-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many. A good initial step is to learn how the administrative source collects and processes classification data and the nature of the administrative functions they are utilized for. In some cases, other variables may be available within the administrative source, which can assist in selecting the correct statistical code. For example, the text description of the occupation can be available, which will help in allocating a code for the occupation. Developing an automatic coding tool for use in both statistics and administrative systems is also an effective strategy. This assures a high degree of coding consistency and strongly encourages the use of a common classification system. Cooperation between the National Statistical Office and the administrative authority effectively solves part of the classification problems. NSO can support the implementation of the classification within the administrative agency. Here you can see issues related to timeliness that can affect the usefulness of administrative data for statistical purposes. Administrative data may not be available in time to meet the statistical needs. Usually, there is some lag between an event such as a birth or death occurring in the actual world and being recorded by the administrative source and being made available to the NSO. The lags can be analyzed to estimate the average lag for registering a birth, for example. The results can then be used to inform adjustments that will improve the quality of the statistical output. The second issue is that of differing periods. For example, data accessible annually cannot be used for quarterly statistics. Shorter period statistics are sometimes possible if they are collected on a rolling annual basis. Models can sometimes be constructed to transform data and obtain a realistic approximation. For the third issue, we must examine the effect of the difference. A model-based mathematical adjustment can be helpful, or sometimes we can use the results of a small survey to adjust the timeliness. Inconsistencies between sources are a particular issue when different data sources are used. Data from one source may appear to conflict with data from another. This could be due to differing definitions, classifications, or reference periods, or just can be an error in one source. To resolve such a conflict, priority rules should be established by deciding which source is most reliable for a particular variable, and then ensuring that lower priority source do not overwrite data from a high priority source. Priorities will differ depending on the variable. Giving feedback to the administrative authority for improving the quality in future can also be helpful. The reasons for missing data in administrative sources might vary. It could be because a specific variable is not collected, is gathered only for some units, or is of low administrative priority. It is critical to determine whether missing data are systematic and then apply appropriate validation and editing criteria. If the source only covers a subset of a target population, generalizing results should be done with care. Missing data for variables used for linking should be treated with more caution. All right. In most cases, the use of administrative data requires linking different data sources. For example, when data from several administrative sources are used to supplement survey data, to populate a statistical register, or for validating a data source. Record linkage refers to the identification and combination of records corresponding to the same entities. For example, persons, enterprises, dwellings, and households throughout two or more data sources. Record linkage methods can be classified into two main groups: deterministic or exact matching, which is when a formal decision rule, typically in the form of unique IDs, exists in data sources to be utilized for matching. Probabilistic matching is when strict decision rules are not applicable. So, probabilistic decision rules are established based on a set of key variables that are common in data sources, such as name, sex, age, etc. The quality of matching depends on the quality of matching variables available in data sources. So it is important to examine common variables and IDs before starting matching process. NSOs usually use automatic matching tools to find the obvious match and not match for record linkage and matching. Then they will refer the possible matches for a clerical review by some specialists. The most common steps for automatic matching include standardization and parsing. In this stage, data pre-processing and cleaning is done. For example, some of the texts are standardized, the format are standardized, and the text is translated to a more logical form for computer processing. The next step is data blocking, which involves breaking the file into smaller blocks for easier and more precise matching. For example, we can establish a block that contains information from a specific town for matching addresses. The next stage is scoring. The scoring is used by most automatic matching methods to estimate the likelihood of a match between two records. The scores are assigned based on how closely the matching variables agree. There are many technical issues regarding the matching that is outside the scope of this presentation. Okay, now let me summarize what we discussed so far in following recommendations. These are actually adapted from the guidelines for assessing the quality of administrative sources for use in censuses. As mentioned earlier, it is critical to identify relevant and promising administrative sources. At the managerial level, national statistical offices should ensure legal basis to receive and use of administrative data is in place, and they should build strong relationships with data providers to ensure effective and sustainable data and metadata sharing. To address concerns, safeguards for confidentiality and privacy should be implemented and made public. The NSO should be clear about the required target population, variables, and concepts, and should have a good understanding of the administrative source. NSO then can examine how much the administrative data source meets the requirements and what steps should be taken to maximize the usability of administrative data for producing statistical outputs. Users should be informed of any strengths and weaknesses associated with the use of administrative data sources. Countries are using administrative data to produce official statistics to different and varying extents, depending on the level of development of their statistical systems and the quality of the administrative data available to them. The most advanced way to utilize administrative data in the production of official statistics is to build a system based on administrative data in which statistical registers are organized into a linked system. Such systems are called statistical register systems and were first developed in Nordic countries. In a statistical system, a register is a structured list of units containing a number of attributes for each unit and having a regular updating mechanism in place. Based on registers, statistical registers are built according to statistical and definitions. The NSOs have the control over the statistical registers. Preconditions for this type of system are quality administrative data, legal base, unified identification system, and cooperation among institutions. Here you can see a conceptual model of a statistical register system. This is adapted from the Register-Based Statistics book. Three base registers are available: the population register, business register, and location register. These are linked to each other and other relevant administrative records using unique identifiers. The statistics can be produced using data from this system. Here, PIN stands for Personal Identity Number, which can be national code or social security code. BIN stands for Business Identity Number, and LIN stands for Location Identity Number, which can be geocode, a combination of address code and dwelling or building number, postal code, or any standard address of a location. There is a wealth of literature and resources on the use of administrative data for official statistics. I have included a few of them here. There are also relevant initiatives such as the collaborative on the use of administrative data for statistics, in which the United Nations Statistics Division and the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data have jointly convened a multi-stakeholder stakeholder collaborative of countries and regional and international agencies with the goal of strengthening countries' capacity to use administrative data sources for statistical purposes. On their webpage, an inventory of resources, country examples, is available. Also, on the Asia-Pacific Data Integration Community of Practice, DCOP, which is a platform for exchanging knowledge and experience on data integration, you can find several country examples and links to relevant resources. To sum up, here are a few key takeaways. There are challenges and issues in using administrative data for producing official statistics, such as access to data and metadata, coordination and collaboration with data owners, interoperability, and linking. Most issues can be resolved or at least reduced by effective planning and management, a good knowledge of data sources, creative thinking, and a willingness to exchange experience and learn from each other. Despite the issues, the benefits of using administrative data continue to exceed the drawbacks. Technical resources and assistance are available. I hope you found this presentation helpful. I stopped here, and thank you very much for your time and attention.